This is General Body Meeting number 12, and we're going to go over GitHub Pages, which is an awesome way to get your personal website up and running. You all should have personal websites. It is definitely a must, especially if you are in EECS. It's a way to showcase yourself, and we'll talk about a little more about why you should have a personal website later. Oh, how convenient. Okay. Everybody break and get yourself some more pizza. So feel free to grab pizza at any time if you want to. So happening around EECS, ACM, we're meeting in 2 weeks' time to get ready for Revolution UC Student Hackathon. This is just an opportunity to maybe form a team or get an idea before the hackathon starts, 2 days before the hackathon, or 3 days before the hackathon starts. If you don't have one of those or both of those, that's a good opportunity. And also we'll give you some tips and advice for the hackathon. There will be free food, and that will be in CRC 3240. IEEE will be meeting next week with an information session on Ztron. They are a security company. I think they're a subsidiary of Northrop Grumman. So if you're interested in security, that is there for you. They'll also have free food, and that's in CRC 3220. ACMW is currently TBD. What does ACM at UC do? Well, we have events. We have bi-weekly meetings with tech talks and workshops. You're in one right now. We host social events. We host Revolution UC, UC Student Hackathon, Make UC, another hackathon. And we also host ICPC, which is the International Collegiate Programming Contest. And speaking of resources that we have, our archive is at acmuc.org/archive, and we also have our calendar up there on the website. And if you fill out attendance today at acmuc.org/c, you'll be added to the listserv if you're not already. And it'll count towards attendance. You need to attend 2 times in a year to be able to vote for officers at the end of the year. So that's coming up in a couple months. Slack is definitely the best way to interact with ACM members or IEEE members or ACMW members. We have one Slack with a lot of members from all organizations. You can find more at acmcincy.slack.com/signup. We do have a code of conduct. We are a student organization, so keep that in mind. ACM at UC is dedicated for a harassment-free experience for everyone. Speaking of Revolution UC, now this is like the most important event that ACM does every year, right? It's a 24-hour student hackathon that we hold right here at UC, and we have over 300 hackers join us from around the Midwest for a weekend of code, community, and self-improvement. How many people are registered for the hackathon so far?
Oh,
raise your hand.
Nobody. Oh my God, embarrassing.
Okay, stop what you're doing right now. Everyone, go to revolutionuc.com and sign up while I'm talking. It's March 2nd and 3rd. If you're in computer science, computer engineering, or electrical engineering, or even some related program, or if you're just interested in programming, then you gotta sign up for the hackathon. It's like the main event to be at every year. We have tons of awesome sponsors joining us this year. This list is not complete. There's a larger list on our website, revolutionuc.com. You can see all the sponsors that will be there. There will be recruiters and engineers from all these companies, or most of these companies, ready to talk to you. Also, look at our website today. Isn't that interesting? I guess this is a one-day only thing, correct, Will? Yeah, okay. So one day only, you get hearts on the Revolution UC website. So that's cool. So let's move into the content. Today we have a workshop/tech talk on getting started with GitHub Pages and starting your own personal website. So let's dive right into the content. So we want a way to build our own personal websites free and easy. So today we're going to set up our own personal website, build our own personal website on our machines. Then we're going to set that up on GitHub and push to GitHub with Git. Finally, we'll add a custom domain name. And later, if there's time, we'll introduce Jekyll for building more complex websites with layouts and blogs, data-driven content, that kind of stuff. So first of all, we're going to dive into building your own personal website. So why start a personal website? Well, you want to tell the world about yourself, right? And you want to show off your work and share your resume. And it's also a good opportunity to start your own blog. Lots of people do that on their personal websites. Who here has their own personal website? Yes, it's a great thing to have. Don't worry, all of you will have a personal website by the end of this. So here's an example of a personal website. This is my friend Dom, and he just has some general information here about him, about his major, about projects that he works on, and this is good enough for his personal website, right? This is what he wants to showcase. Here's another example of a personal website. This one is just a blog, and very simple, very straightforward. Also, here's another personal website, my personal website, which is on Jekyll, and I have both my projects list and posts. I also have my resume, which I don't put up my actual resume. I just link out to my LinkedIn because I don't want to have to update a resume. So those are 3 examples of personal websites. Of course, you can get as creative as you like. So how do we actually build our own personal website? Well, the basics start with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. You've probably heard of HTML and CSS, right?
No.
Who has not heard of HTML or CSS? Oh no. Okay. Well, that's okay, because we build web pages with HTML, with the .html extension. Then we style our web pages, make them look pretty with CSS. And if we want to add interactive content, we use JavaScript. And this is all contained in the browser. Yes, Corey?
Can't you do all this in one file?
Yes, you could do this all in one file. Typically, websites break this out into multiple different files. But yes, you can contain it in one file if you want to. That would be an HTML file. But today we'll just concentrate on HTML and CSS and keep it simple so we can get our personal website up and running. So here's some example HTML. So Lucy Bearcat really wants to make her own personal website. Does everybody know what Lucy Bearcat is? Yeah. Okay. It's the Bearcat at the Cincinnati Zoo. So we're going to make a personal website for Lucy. So you can see right off the bat what HTML looks like. We have some different tags all over the place. HTML, head, meta, title, all of this different stuff. So we have a title with Lucy Bearcat. We have a description of Lucy's website, my awesome website. And here in the body, we have some content. Just an H1 with hello world and a paragraph tag saying, hey, this is my website. So if we preview this in the browser, this is what it looks like. This is Lucy's personal website. Of course, it doesn't look very good right now, does it? There's not much content, and it's not styled at all. It looks very bare. So to fix this, we can add CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's the way how on the web we style HTML pages. So here we have a body element, or a body tag that we're going to style. We're going to add a margin on it. This specific attribute is going to center our page. That's what 0 auto is doing. That means, hey, use margin 0 on the top and bottom, and then do auto on the left and right so we get a centered page. We're going to set a max width of 600 pixels so it's not wiping off the screen. And then we're just going to set a font family of sans serif, not serif, because Times New Roman looks terrible on the web. And then just for fun, we'll throw in an H1 tag with a color of blue. So let's preview it again. Oh man, it looks exactly the same, doesn't it? This is terrible. What happened? I thought we added our CSS and like this would update our HTML and it would look pretty. No, it didn't work. Unfortunately, we forgot to link our CSS to our HTML. So this is really important. Whenever you want to link in a style sheet, all you have to do is add the link tag with href and then the name of your style sheet. So in this case, I called my style sheet style.css. So I linked it in, and with no other changes, now my styles have been reflected on this web page. So now I have HTML and CSS driving my personal website. Of course, there's not a lot of content here. So let's try it. So if you want to start with your own personal website, I'll go along with you. We'll create a new folder on your machine, create a new index.html file in that folder. Also in that folder, create a style.css file, and then link your style.css to index.html. And then finally, I want you to try to preview index.html in the browser. Also, if you need to follow along with these slides, that's totally cool. Go to github.com/ACM and look at the archive repository. And there, the very first link, we have workshop slides in PDF format so that you can follow along with this content. Okay. So let's actually try this. So right now I have a new folder created, and I have an index.html file, and I have that exact same HTML that we started with. So really not much, right? So let's try to open this up in the browser. I can do that if you're on Mac or Windows or Linux, I think. You can literally just go to the folder where your index.html document is and drag that document onto the browser like that. Cool. So now I can preview my changes as I go along. All I have to do to preview after modification is just refresh the page. So I have some HTML here, and I want to bring in the style sheet. So I can do that with link and then an href. Whoops, that's not it. Style sheet, href is style.css. So I want to do that. Unfortunately, right now, style.css doesn't exist, so it's not going to bring in anything. So I'm going to create that file real quick. And just to test if things are working, I'll put in h1 color blue and see if that works. So I'm going to refresh in the browser now that I have content in style.css, and I have linked my style sheet in. And yeah, it worked. So now the color on that h1 tag is blue. Cool. So now we can do some more basic HTML. We can add some more content, like a list of my projects. So what are Lucy's projects? The zoo, maybe? The basketball team? I don't know. Things like that. So that's how we create a list in HTML. So you might wonder, like, what is the best way to learn CSS and HTML? Well, it's literally just trying things out and seeing if they work or not. It's just experimenting. There's no real answer for that. Of course, the internet has a ton of resources for HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So if you just start Googling, you're probably going to figure it out. All right, so let's try to center this page. So I'll add in that body tag, and I'll say margin 0 auto. So now when I refresh, hopefully it's centered. It's not centered. No. I'll add in a max width so the browser knows how much width to give our content. That's a little better. So now our content is centered. Any questions about HTML or CSS so far?
The PowerPoint and GitHub.
Oh. So this PowerPoint is, if you go to github.com/ACM UC/archive, and then the first link right here. Yes, Corey.
How could you get that text to be centered with the entire page right in the middle?
Right in the middle. Good question. So that's a little bit different. So that would be, I believe that would be, I think that would be text align center. Is that what you're looking for? So if you add text align center, all of the text on your page will be centered. This is the debugger, by the way, for web browsers. So this is a really convenient way to try things out. So I can increase or decrease values. That's really small. Sorry about that. I can try out things like change properties, change that color to red, something like that. So yeah, that's how you would center your text. So let's see that again. So as I modify this, the width of the page changes. Oops. So also, I'm going to add an about me for Lucy. I'm a real life bear cat at the Cincinnati Zoo. Cool. I'm going to add in a little header for that. And I'll also make this into a header. Cool. We have some good content now. Any other questions about HTML or CSS in general? Yeah, the basics are pretty easy to follow along, I think. But there is a lot you can do with these two languages. Okay, so now we have a pretty solid personal website for Lucy. I don't know about you, but I think we should put this on the internet. What do you guys think? Yeah, cool. So, how do we get something onto the internet? If I haven't, if I have something on the internet, or if I have like an HTML page, how do I get it onto the internet?
Twitter.
I mean, yes, you could do that. Well, one thing you could do is use a place to host that index.html file, right? You need somewhere on the public internet, on a public cloud somewhere, where anybody can access that, where it has an IP address where you can access that. So we're going to set up with GitHub Pages, because that is one way to get your HTML, CSS, whatever, on the public internet. And we can do that because it's integrated with GitHub and, of course, Git. So why GitHub Pages? Well, it's super easy to use because it's directly integrated into GitHub. You don't really have to do anything other than set up a repository and push your code to it. So we just need to display our index.html and style.css files to the open internet. So this is a great way to do that. We just create a new repository, add the HTML and CSS, commit, and then push to GitHub. So GitHub Pages is a free way to host static websites. When I say static, I mean you can't like push like Node.js or PHP or Python or something into this and expect it to work. It's static files only, HTML and CSS. We can use Git commands to interact with GitHub Pages. Like I said, git commit, git push, and we can also add custom domain names to make it our own. By default, every single GitHub Pages website comes with a subdomain, which we'll see later, but you can further customize that with a custom domain. So let's set up on GitHub Pages. So we're going to log into github.com and then just create a new repository and make sure to call it yourusername.github.io. This is really important. This yourusername.github.io is a naming convention for building GitHub Pages websites. So, and then next, we will initialize a Git repository locally on our own machine. And then we'll add the GitHub clone URL as origin. So let's walk through that real fast. So I'm going to go back over to GitHub. And I want to create, my username on GitHub is just my full name, Noah Bass. So I'm going to create a new repository and call it Noah Bass, my username, .github.io. So just remember to replace your username right here. For the description, of course, you can put anything you want. I'm just going to say demo at ACM. And I'll keep it public so anybody can see my code. And we don't really need to initialize this with a README. We have our own code that we want to push to this repository. So again, reviewing, we went here. We wanted to create a new repository, and then our username goes right in front of .github.io. So I'll go ahead and create that. Cool. So our repository is created on GitHub. So GitHub is actually showing us some instructions right here on what to do next to get started. So I'm going to select option 2 here, because option 1, we can, if we didn't have a repository on our local machine, we could add some code for the first time, but we want to push an existing repository. Okay. In order to do that, back where your index.html and style.css is, we're going to initialize our repository with git init. Cool. So we have an empty Git repository. Next, we need to hook up our Git repository on our local machine to the GitHub URL. So if you ever used GitHub before, you've done this before. So I will add this URL as my remote URL so I can push to it. So I'm going to copy this URL and then type in a simple command, git remote add origin, and then throw in the name of the URL. So why origin? Why use the name origin right here?
I mean, I have an answer. The origin is the source of truth for the repository.
Yeah, it's kind of like a naming convention. You could name this whatever you wanted, but most people call it origin, so I'm going to add that in. And to check if that worked, I'm going to say git remote -v to list out our remotes. So it looked like that worked. We created a repository, we added an origin, and we saw the origin was added. Cool. So what should we do next? We did this. We added the GitHub clone URL, right? So next, we're ready to add our HTML and CSS, commit that, and then push that to GitHub. So we're super close. So I'm going to do a git add. Well, first of all, let's look what's here. We have HTML and CSS. We have that newly created .git file because we just initialized a repository. So I'll do a git add on index.html. I'll also do a git add on style.css. And to check if that worked, we can use git status. So we have 2 changes to be committed, those 2 files. So I will go through with a git commit. You could use Vim or whatever, but I'm just going to use -m for my commit message. And just call this my first commit on my website. Cool. So I'm going to commit that. Whoops. What happened? There must have been some syntax error. So let's look at that in the log. Our git log is now 1 commit, and it just says my first commit on my website. So really, in review, we added that origin. We added our files to our local Git repository, checked on its status, made the commit, and then checked if the commit worked. It did. So now, all we have to do is push this to GitHub. So we can see it on github.com. So we set that up on origin, so let's push to it. Cool, that was fast. Let's refresh, and there it is. Okay, so now we have our HTML and CSS on GitHub in that repository. So, in theory now, we should be ready to rock. Oops. Okay. So now that we have that, the naming convention again was yourusername.github.io. So example, if your name was Octocat, your website would exist at octocat.github.io. For me, it's at noahbass.github.io. So let's try to see that. There it is. It's on the public internet. Thank you. And as you can see, we even have HTTPS support built right in to GitHub pages. So that's awesome. So in just a matter of minutes, we committed our changes, pushed to GitHub, and saw them live. Okay, so any questions on that before we move on? Yes?
Say you wanted to host multiple websites, can you do that? Or do you have to follow the naming convention when you get that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So on your GitHub account, you can host as many websites as you want. So the naming convention here is specifically for building out personal websites. So this is a little more detailed, but on repositories that use this naming convention, GitHub Pages looks at the master branch for the content of the website. However, if you make a different repository and name it like my website or something, GitHub Pages would look at not the master branch, but a branch called gh.pages, so that your master branch could be used for like just regular old source control for your project. So that's just, I don't know, it's been like that since GitHub Pages existed. So yeah, so that's like the convention there. Yes, you can have unlimited.
So you only need that GitHub Pages branch if you deviate from that naming convention.
That's correct. Yeah. Otherwise, just push to master. Cool. Okay. So we set up on GitHub Pages, so that's awesome. One thing to note here, a pro tip, enforce HTTPS on your repository in the settings for your repository. So I think enforce HTTPS was already turned on automatically for me when I created this repository. Let's double check. So I'm on my repository, I'm gonna click settings, and if I scroll down, yes, the GitHub Pages section of settings says enforce HTTPS is already on. In fact, I can't turn it off. So yeah. And if you're interested, this uses, I believe it uses, okay, so it's just using github.com's wildcard certificate. Cool. So that's interesting there. Moving on. So now that we've done this, now what if we don't want this .github.io like name? Because that isn't very cool or memorable, right? No one wants a .github.io. Everyone wants their own custom domain name, right? So why custom domain name? Well, in my case, I wanted noahbass.com, not noahbass.github.io. And if I set up noahbass.com on my GitHub, the .github.io will redirect to my actual website, which is cool. So having your own domain is like super credible, memorable. It's also very cool to have your own domain, but it's not free, unfortunately. It costs $10 a year for a .com, which isn't unreasonable, right? But you can buy these domains at a registrar, such as Namecheap.com. That's just one. There's lots of others. Yes?
Cloudflare.
Yes, you can buy domains at Cloudflare now. You can also buy domains straight from Google now. Domain.com is another. I mean, we can just list them all off here. There's like, I'm pretty sure there's like thousands of them. So right here for my personal website, I have a custom domain name, and you can see it right up there. So it's memorable and credible. So to set up a custom domain name, we need a few steps. We need both our Git repo and our domain's DNS records. These DNS records can usually be found in your registrar's settings for your domain, wherever you did that, or through an external DNS service that you might be using. So all we need to do is buy the domain, add a CNAME to our Git repo, commit the CNAME file, and push that to GitHub, then modify our domain's DNS records to point our A records to GitHub. Don't worry, we'll show all of this in a minute. So adding the CNAME file, we'll touch CNAME in our directory, touch just makes a new file. We'll echo the name of our domain into CNAME. So our CNAME will contain just one line, and that's the name of our domain. I'll add it, and then we'll commit it and push. Finally, we'll point our A records for our domain to GitHub pages. So when people look up our domain, they know what IP address to go to, and that's the GitHub pages IP address. So let's actually walk through it right now. So I'm going to use this handy link to help us through that process. So let's bring it over here. Yes. So for this demo, I am using a domain called makeuc.io. The MakeUC hackathon isn't happening currently, so I decided let's just use it for the demo. Why not? Don't worry, I backed up all the DNS records beforehand, so we can revert back afterwards. So makeuc.io is currently empty. It cannot find a server, so we can confirm that there's no DNS records. It's totally not working at all. Cool. So first, I mentioned we first have to add a CNAME file to our directory. So right now we just have the HTML and CSS. So I will add a new file called CNAME, and then I'll put my name of my domain, my custom domain that I want in it, and that is makeuc.io. Very simple, just one line. This is all we need. So if I do a git status, I'll see that we have one untracked file. I'll add the CNAME just to show you that we have a new file ready to be committed. So I'll do a git commit on that, and I'll say add CNAME file. Cool? What? Okay, I must be hitting something other than return. So I'll do a git log on that, and we can see now we added a second commit on top in our git history, add CNAME file. So I'll push this to master. Cool. So now if we go back to our Git repository, we should have 3 files. We do. Cool. So that CNAME file is in there, and it has that makeuc.io name in it. So right now, just because we added a CNAME file with makeuc.io does not mean that immediately when we hit makeuc.io, we're going to see this content. We need to hook up our DNS to GitHub pages to make that connection. So that's what we're going to do now. So yes?
What's DNS?
DNS is the domain name system. It's this global network of names and IP addresses. So when you type a domain name in your browser, you'll get to the right server in the end. And if you take when you do take the computer science networking course, or I think is it in computer engineering too? I don't even know. But when you take the networking course, you'll learn all about DNS and how it works and why it's important. But at a very high level, that's how it all works. So what we need to do is point to GitHub's IP addresses. So how do we know what those IP addresses are? Well, we just have to go to GitHub's help page and look at those IP addresses. So for me, I'm going to take this IP address and point makeuc.io to it. Now I am using a DNS provider called Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is really cool. One, because it's free, it offers a ton of flexibility, and also it offers a CDN within its service. So you both have a CDN, content delivery network, and a DNS service in one. So that's really cool. So I have makeuc.io and the IP address, so I'll just add that. Cool, we added that. And also it's good practice to have a backup IP address if the end host provides one. So I'll add a second in there too. So now we have 2 unique IP addresses that we're pointing to. Cool. So hopefully this won't take a long time to propagate. Let's try to go to makeuc.io right now and see what happens. Well, that's the wrong page. It's definitely cached. Let's do a curl on makeuc.io. Could not resolve host. Oh no. Well, I guess we could sit here all day and try to curl it.
Set your DNS.
Reset what?
Set your DNS to Cloudflare.
But, I mean, yeah, I could. Oh, no, they don't. Yeah, you have to use their DNS. That's a good point. Yeah. Oh, well. But something fun, if we just go to this IP address directly that GitHub Pages is offering, what will happen? Oh, no, cannot find share. What? That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, so we get... Oh, where is it moved to? Oh. Oh, that's not good. Let's try to do a dig on makeuc.io. Nothing. Okay, so we have our names here for Cloudflare, so that's good, but nothing for that. All right, let's turn on that. Maybe that'll magically help. It's working. On L. Okay, so on Brendan's phone, it's working.
Mine too.
Is it actually? Okay, so maybe UC's DNS servers are having a rough time right now. I'm almost certain it's that. Yeah. Brendan, would you like to show everyone that it is working? Cool. So makeuc.io is working. Cool. So really, if UC's DNS wasn't terrible, that would have only taken like less than a minute. So that's how easy it is to add a custom domain name if it would have worked. Yeah, still not working. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely not Cloudflare's fault. Yeah, so setting up a custom domain name on GitHub Pages is super fast. Okay, so we added that CNAME file and pointed our A record. So we're pretty much done with our custom domain. So the next thing I want to go over, we have a little bit of time at the end, that's awesome, is to talk about Jekyll for building more complex statically generated websites. So why Jekyll? Well, it's a static site generator, and it's the most popular static site generator out there, and there's a ton of them, all written in different languages. This one happens to be written in Ruby, but there are a ton of ones written in Python, Go, Node.js, like every language you could imagine. And a static site generator just takes something, like markdown files, whatever, and transpiles them to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, something that a web browser or a web server can just serve up. It's really easy to build complex websites with this. For example, the ACM UC website uses Jekyll and GitHub Pages, which is awesome. You know, it looks like there's like a lot of content here. So there's tons of like markdown files, HTML files, layout files, doing all this work that would be just like terrible to do if we didn't have a static site generator. There would be so much duplicated code and stuff. It would be terrible. So for example, this check-in page that you went to earlier to check in today, this is all the code for the page, right? We just have a heading and an iframe, which just pulls in a Google form. And we specify a layout saying, hey, use this pre-existing layout because we don't want to write it twice. We want to stay dry. So that's an example of a more like a super complex, or maybe like intermediate Jekyll site. It's not insanely complex, but it's more than just like a single HTML file. So with Jekyll, you write mostly a Markdown, which is a language that transpiles to HTML. You reuse some layouts, and there is native support on GitHub Pages for Jekyll, like I mentioned. So you just push your Jekyll code to GitHub, and GitHub will compile that for you and serve it up. And it is a Ruby gem because it is written in Ruby. So here's a Jekyll Starter to get started. First of all, you need Jekyll installed on your machine. If you're on Mac, you likely already have this installed. If you're on Linux, you may. If you're on Windows, you may not. So if you're on Mac, it's as easy as just running a brew install Ruby. That's how easy it is to install Ruby. I already have Ruby installed here on my user local opt Ruby bin Ruby, and I install it with Homebrew. By the way, yeah, brew is Homebrew, which is an easy way on Mac OS to install lots of libraries and frameworks. Okay. So what we're going to do is install Ruby, install Jekyll and Bundler. These are two Ruby gems. Ruby gems are kind of just like libraries in Ruby. Jekyll, obviously we know what that is already. Bundler is just a handy library to run things, to run executables, to do some work behind the scenes. Then we'll create a new Jekyll project, CD into that Jekyll project, and then do a bundle exec, that's that executable, Jekyll serve to serve up our website locally so we can see that. And all of our files will transpile to the _site directory. So let's try this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to CD up. Unfortunately, I'm going to wipe out everything I have basically. Or wait, no, I'm going to create a new directory called My New Website with Jekyll. Jekyll New, My New Website with Jekyll being the directory name. So I'll create that. So Bundler is doing its installation process. That took like 0 time. So I'll CD into that directory and check it out. So we have a lot of stuff in here now, more than we were used to. Let's go through it all. So in this Jekyll Starter, we have some HTML pages, some Markdown pages. We have a configuration file. We have a spot where we can write blog posts if we want to do that. And of course, we have an index.md for Markdown that transpiles to index.html. So when I run bundle exec Jekyll serve, Jekyll will see all of this stuff in my directory and transpile it and throw it into the /_site directory with everything in HTML and CSS. No more Markdown. And in your Jekyll workflow, this is fairly common. You'll, of course, clone everything, open it up in your editor, just run bundle exec Jekyll serve, and anytime you make a change on any file, the changes will be reflected in your web browser, and Jekyll will rebuild with those changes. Then you would commit and push your changes when you're ready to move on. So let's try this out. So I did the Jekyll new. Now I want to take a look inside. So we have an index.md file. Let's do a bundle exec Jekyll serve. So Jekyll found the config file and it started the build. So I can check out the build at this URL, which is local to me. And there's our website, right? So Jekyll gave us this, this layout built in and a list of blog posts built in, and also gave us one about page, which is cool. So let's try to edit the about page. I'll just type in hello world, and so you can see that when I hit save, Jekyll should rebuild. And there it goes. It regenerated that file, and when we refresh here, we should see hello world. Yeah, we did. So that's how easy it is to do your development workflow locally with Jekyll. Cool. Let's also check out this configuration file in Jekyll. Wow, there's a lot of comments in here. So we have some baseline stuff. You can totally customize all of this stuff. It's very open-ended. So website title, I need to change this to Lucy Bearcat, of course. And hopefully, before it was Your Awesome Title, but hopefully it changes to Lucy Bearcat. Oh no, it's not changing to Lucy Bearcat. Why is that? Well, we changed the configuration file. Remember config.yaml? When you change the configuration file, you need to restart everything, unfortunately. But with any other file, it doesn't matter. So let's try to refresh again. And there we go. We got Lucy Bearcat. So our custom Jekyll website is off to a great start. So let's try to put this up on GitHub and see what happens. So these are the files we have. I'm going to do a git init, and then I'm going to add the git remote for the same website we worked on earlier as origin. And I can get that by hitting this clone button and then getting this URL here and copying and pasting it in. So we got that. These are the same steps we followed earlier. Cool. Now I want to, if we look at our git log, we have nothing in our git log. So I need to commit all these files, or add all these files. Check on the status. So we're adding all these files, as you can see. Notice we're not adding _site. That's where our generated site went. We don't want to commit that, because when we push to GitHub, GitHub pages will take our files, do a Jekyll build, and generate that _site for us. So we don't want to commit that. So I'll do a git commit my website now with Jekyll. Oops. Okay. We do a git log. That's cool. I'm going to do a git push on this up to our git repo. Is there a problem with this? Pushing to the git repo now? Okay, there is a problem with it. What is the problem? Remember, I used, this is the remote.
Different.
Huh?
It's different than that.
What's different?
Well, the full website is new.
Yeah, I have a completely different Git history in this. I have a completely different Git history on my local compared to what's already on GitHub, right? So none of these commits are in common at all. There's going to be an error here when I try to commit, or push, excuse me. So rejected. We couldn't push because GitHub was like, no, fam, I didn't see those latest commits in common, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to override this, and don't actually do this in real life. This is terrible to force commit to master, but I'm going to do it anyway. Cool, we just force committed to master. Never do that. So now if we refresh, we're back to one commit, and that commit was the commit I just made. And our files are now all here. So now, if we check this out, nobas.github.io, that's not right. Hopefully it'll rebuild here in a minute. Yeah, Jekyll does take a couple seconds to do its rebuild. I think it just worked. Nope. Yeah, okay. So it must be a caching issue. Oh, let's just... Yeah, okay. So it was just a little caching issue there. Oh, wait, no. That's the... Okay, there it is. Yeah, it was just a caching issue. Okay. Okay, cool. So now on nobas.github.io, our Jekyll website was pushed and it was built. So that's awesome. Notice if we go to, well, I'm not even sure if this is going to work. Brendan, you're going to have to double check on this for me. Notice in here we don't have anything called CNAME, so that whole custom domain thing is not going to work at all. So I'm going to add the CNAME back in. And let's just add makeuc.io like we did before. I'll add that in. Whoops. Cool. and I'll commit that. So I'll say added custom domain. Cool. So now we have that second commit on top, and I'll push that up to GitHub. So when we refresh our repository, we should see that the CNAME is now there. Cool. With makeuc.io as the name. So now, theoretically, we should be able to curl our makeuc. Oh no.
It is there.
What does it look like?
Correct.
As in this? Oh, that was interesting too. When we, okay, disregard that. When we went to noabas.github.io, we were redirected to makeuc.io. That's interesting. Okay. Brandon, do you want to hold up your phone again? Or Christian, you want to hold up your phone? Show everyone it's working. Cool, so makeuc.io is working with the new content. That's awesome. So thanks, UC. That was great. Or thanks, UCIT. So that's how easy it is to get up and running with Jekyll. So that's really it for today. We got in everything I wanted to get in before 7 o'clock. Here's some resources that you can check out. The GitHub guides page for GitHub pages is perfect for learning about this stuff and getting set up for the first time. The quick start for getting a custom domain set up is very useful because I just used that in today's workshop. And also, we only set up a Apex domain, which is like makeuc.io. We did not set up www.makeuc.io. So there's a help page on GitHub for how to do that as well. JekyllRB.com, as in Jekyll Ruby, is a great resource. They have great docs there on how to get started with Jekyll. And of course, some registrar like Namecheap.com is perfect for grabbing your first domain name for around $10. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you all for coming, and please grab more pizza on your way out. Thank you.